Hello, this is Steve from runcationPH. The pandemic reality of COVID-19 has caused much havoc in the millions of lives around the world. In our own little ways, runcationPH and AYLA Young Leaders Alliance join forces to coming up to enlighten or to have an online talakayan to enlighten and awaken relevant issues in several in this survival in this difficult time. Okay,
Magandang gabi, mabuhay Pilipinas! We are here tonight to run our second online talakayan with the topic Raising Our Flag, Being Motivated in Difficult Times. Our first series focused on fear and anxiety in this pandemic reality. We drilled down deep on the issues of surmountable insights from a wide range of perspectives, particularly on how fear and anxieties really affected our lives. This time, as we just recently concluded our Independence Day celebration, Ayala Young Leaders and Runcation PH will be launching the second entitled Raising Our Flag, Being Motivated in These Difficult Times. Motivation has been deeply discussed, especially in this pandemic reality. Tonight, we will actually be hearing insights on our esteemed speakers covering the science of motivation, motivation and spirituality, motivation secrets from the perspectives of a civic volunteer and of a person of film arts. And the last speaker will be centering on his motivation journey of being a leader, surviving its ups and downs. So to everyone, sit back and listen to the grains of insights, learnings, and real life lessons to share with speakers. So to start off, may we call on we will call in our resident psychologist, and she will be discussing more of the science of motivation. So may we call on now Sena Salcedo to discuss our first topic. Take it away, Sen.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening po sa inyong lahat. Magandang gabi. So sa ngayon po, it's always an honor and a privilege to discuss or to share with you the psychological perspective of motivation, especially in time of pandemic. So let me share with you my screen. So I hope everybody can see it. Okay, so this is the science of motivation. But before I dig into the theories or the psychological explanation of what motivation is, I'd like to share with you my personal story. So, so this is my story now. In April 2020, I suffered from severe case of GERD or acid reflux. So therefore, I cannot eat, I cannot sleep, I can't even work. So I was always lying down, nauseated, and vomiting. So going to the hospital at time of COVID is really, really challenging, especially for our hospitals. They don't want to take me in They don't want to admit me, but my friend, who's a great, my friend since grade school, helped me to be admitted and treated at ACE Medical Center in Quezon City, Dr. Dazzle Velasco Galgana. Later on, I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, which explains my sudden weight of loss, palpitations, nausea, and vomiting. So I thought at the time, is this the time? Is this the end game for me? Am I really gonna die? So, but my mind says no, it's not. So this is just a warning. Therefore, in my healing process, I was motivated about my life with my family, with my kids, my husband, our parents, our in-laws, I mean my brothers, and also my friends, and the career that I'm going to take, because I'm a new psychologist in the field. So there are also what ifs. So these are the things that I can still do for God's glory. So these are the things that motivate me to continue with the medication, to continue with healing. Another friend of mine also, um, man, she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer last year. But after all, she went through all the journey to healing as well and to recovery. She starts vlogging recently, and she shared all the tips, the tricks that she had to motivate her, and hopefully to motivate others as well in the same situation. So she devised this acronym ACTORS, which you can see on the screen that I just shared. So this is more of acceptance, of challenging yourself, of trusting the Lord in the process, and doing the opportunities that you haven't done before. Of course, there's always the repenting and to seek forgiveness and selflessness, because when you're on the situation where you don't know if you're going to live or you're going to die, there's nothing that you can think of but you and how do you fight for it. So that's also a motivation for her. So for people who are in the same situation, if you know friends who's in the same situation and wanted to be motivated, especially in the time of the pandemic, you can actually follow her on her YouTube blog and her journey as a cancer patient survivor. Now let's talk about the psychology of motivation based on theories of positive psychology. So, by definition, motivation is an internal process. So, this is all about you and your thought processes. So, a condition inside us that desires a change. You're motivated to change either yourself or the environment around you. So, we need three elements for motivation: you have the drive, the need, and your behavior. So what does it mean? So the drive means you have to do something to change the situation. As I've said earlier, this is the desire to change the situation because there's a need. There's a need to satisfy a necessary uh, psychological needs or physiological needs, safety, love and belonging, and esteem need. And these are all essentials to your life and to your well-being and growth. And definitely, even if you have this drive and you have this need, if your behavior is not aligned with it, then there's no motivation. So when you speak of motivation, the behavior is definitely a goal directed. So there's a need to do something, and you have to do, and you have to set your goals in order for that to accomplish. So there are also types of motivation. There's internal motivation and external motivation. So internal, some people would actually this is known for intrinsic or push motivation, and external is pull motivation or extrinsic motivation. So when we speak of internal, these are more of biological variables originating from you, so from your brain, from your nervous system, and for your psychological variables such as your needs or your mind. While external or extrinsic motivation, this is more of your environmental variables that describe external sources like incentives or your goals. So this is more of rewards or what can you get from that motivation outside of yourself. So when there is a motivation, our internal sources of motivation, which is the internal and external, if they are actually interacting, then that would mean that you are ready to do or to act on your motivation. It would directly affect your behavior. Okay, so what are the sources of motivation? As I've said earlier, my sources of motivation is my family, my friends, my career, and all the what ifs that I can still do. And there's a lot of sources of motivation. If you will be talking to a lot of people, why are they doing what they're doing in order to move forward? They would tell you a lot of things. You can list down a lot of things. But for the purpose of this sharing, I would like to share three sources of motivation. First is the individual personal histories. So these are your lifelong experiences that shape your motives and determine the use of goals and incentives. So kapag ka motivated ka, it doesn't mean that you're just going to do something because you want to do it, but internally you have actually some goals and incentives in mind. Why will you do it if you can't get anything out of it? So it could either be a material thing or a non-material thing, but satisfaction of your needs. And then we also have sources of motivation depends on stable individual differences like personality traits, and also I mentioned earlier your psychological needs. So if your personality traits is strong and you're a very goal seeking individual, definitely it would move you to do something towards your goal. And also the psychological needs also trigger for you to move or to desire to change your environment. And last one is emotion as a motivation or emotion as motives. So again, there you can list a lot of sources of motivation, but for tonight, I'd like to focus on these three sources, especially on the emotion. Okay, so motivation and emotion. According to Isard in 1993, emotions are considered motivational because they generate burst of energy and get our attention and cause our reaction to significant events of our lives. So, emotions automatically and rapidly synchronize four interrelated aspects of experience: feelings, arousal or bodily responses, purpose, and expression or behavior. So these four elements needs to be synchronized or aligned in order for us to move or to be motivated. Since motivation is actually a split seconds decision, you won't be able to really process all these four interrelated aspects. So let me explain it further. So once you have a significant event, the emotion kicks in. A lot of people would actually understand emotion as just feelings, but it's not. It actually consists of the four elements. So emotion is the distinct pattern of brain activity, what's going on in your brain. And it actually, yes, includes the feelings or your subjective experiences, your cognitive interpretation of that significant event, and then there's always a physiological responses or bodily responses because your body is preparation for something. It could be a flight or fight response, and also there's a change in your hormonal activity. So when we have a motivation, dopamine kicks in, or dopamine is a neurotransmitter that keeps you moving or keeps you coordinated. It's a pleasure neurotransmitter as well, or your endorphins. It also activates your body, and then it would change your hormonal activity. And then there's your expressive behaviors. There's social signals and communications. There's facial expression and the tone of voice. So these things you don't usually uh, process right away, or if you have no awareness of how you react to your motivations, you wouldn't be able to mind all of this expressive behaviors. And of course, the sense of purpose. So again, when we speak of motivation, it's directly going to a goal or to a state of, or a motivational state. So let me give you some example of this pattern. So for this pandemic, all of these three aspects are interrelated into a human person. So the significant event for my example is the government declared lockdown in March. So what happened? So the feeling of fear, anger, and frustration. Definitely, this is something that um, autopilot in our minds. When something significant event happened, you feel this way. For example, in here, you fear anger, you fear you feel anger, you have fears, you have frustrations. So that's the feelings. And then your body could have an increased heart rate, or probably you're sweating. So these are bodily responses for that significant event. And then there could be behaviors like frowning or questioning why. And then you will start probably doing some comments in social media, why is it happening, or you may be calling your friends. So these are expressive behaviors of your motivation. And then after that, you could probably have the sense of purpose. Now, in terms of motivation, it could be a positive action or a negative action. That is why it's very important to be aware of our motivation, so that it could drive you to a positive action which is healthy for you. Okay, and my key takeaways here are: number one, understanding what motivates you will give the capacity to find workable solutions to problems. And as I've said earlier, if you know what's motivating you, it would be very easy for you to identify what kind of actions or course of actions are you going to take. And if you know what's motivating you, it will empower those around you toward more goal attainment, optimal experience, full functioning, and healthy development for you. Of course, there's a so-called resilient sense of self, especially at this time of a pandemic. So if you do have this resiliency, it will reverse, or you have a cope with impulsive urges, habitual experiences, goal failure, counterproductive functioning, negative emotion, your boredom, especially nowadays, maladaptive or dysfunctional development, and fragile sense of self. So if you don't know what's motivating you, it could actually make or break you at the same time. So for tonight, I'd like to leave you a message from Robert Schuller. Let your hopes, not your hurts, shape your future, because tough times like this never last, but tough people do. So these are my references. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Sen. Actually, with what you have mentioned, we're getting some feedback on um, in this pandemic reality, madali ba talagang tumayo? Or ano yung basic steps na pwede nating ibigay sa mga viewers natin on how people can initially stand up? Kasi I would assume that what you have mentioned is it's really a process.
Yes.
Pero what can we say in terms of the input na pwede nilang sundin or pwede nilang i-practice so that they would actually have this awareness that, okay,
Mhm.
we are in this deep situation, medyo problemado,
Mhm.
pero we need to get up and we need to stand up. So what can you say on that, Sen?
Yes, thank you, Kuya Ben, for that question. Well, actually, we are not required to react immediately or positively to this pandemic, because if we don't think about how we're going to react or to handle this pandemic, we might be doing harm rather than good. So it's baby steps, really. So if you think that you're having some difficulty with adjusting with the pandemic, especially with the reopening, reopening, we are already in the GCQ and there's a lot of adjustments. Then take time to process what's going on with you. What is your why? It's very important to know your why. Why do you have to do this? What do you need to do? Because if you know the purpose of why do you have to stand up again, then your body actually would just follow. 'Di ba? Sabi nga nila, great thing starts from small beginnings. So, you don't have to pressure yourself na makakatayo ka kaagad, dahil it's a process nga. So, baby steps muna tayo. Once na makita mo kung ano ba yung reason ko, yung purpose ko of going back to my new normal, or facing the new normal, then you would understand eventually the process will be smooth. But if you don't take time to understand your thoughts, your priorities, your motivation, what drives you, then probably later on, mawawala ka along the way. That's why it's important to not rush things, but rather take your time, sit down, and understand yourself better. And again, what is your why for doing this one?
Thank you very much for that. Sen, you mentioned about like take your time. So when you say take your time, I mean, do you have a period of time like a year or parang ano naman, parang sinasabi lang parang enough space
Yeah.
and you could actually move on, but not really. Alam mo yun, kasi like there's a book that I read that parang parang mas nag-enjoy tayo na magstay dun sa not so good situation and really enjoy the drama. But at the end of the day, there's really a sense of you need to wake up one day that you need to stand up because of course there's a future that you need to build. I mean, you just cannot actually focus more on the past and actually be not recognizing na kailangan meron ka talagang gawin to actually have change. As in going to some like yung overthinking. Like
Mm-hmm.
people right now, especially in this COVID-19 reality, parang naging ano ba to? Parang naging resulta ba to ng mga overthinkers? Parang did we produce more overthinkers now? What can you say about that?
Overthinkers po kasi is out of fear and or probably anxiety. So a lot of people ngayon, yung mga dating walang symptoms of fear and anxiety because of the pandemic, nagkaroon ng symptoms of fear and anxiety. And those people who are easily anxious about situation, lalo yun na enhance. So for us, overthinking could be challenged. Bakit ka nag-overthink? So overthinking is part also of irrational thinking. So if you overthink, then challenge what you think, challenge your thoughts. What are the evidence? Bakit ako nag-overthink? What are the logics behind those overthinking? Because overthinking could actually consume you instead of you being positive. It rather inhibits you to become more productive. So if you think that you are overthinking a lot about all these things, then look for the evidence of all the thoughts that you have. Kasi probably po hindi po siya logical, hindi po siya rational thoughts, but rather it will just consume your irrational thoughts and it's not healthy for your mental well-being.
Okay. So thank you for that, Sen. For
Thank
the
you.
meantime, we'll pause because we will have a open discussion in a while. So guys, those who are viewing, please ready your questions to Sen. And after the discussions of all of our speakers, we'll have an open forum. So now we actually now go to another segment, which is actually dealing and intercorrelating motivation and spirituality. And we're pleased to have with us the head of the campus ministry of Ateneo de Manila University, Father Ro Atilano, SJ. Take it away, Father Ro.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to share some points on motivation and spirituality. So, para lang itong isang mahabang homily, no? Sana walang matutulog. And sige, let me also share to you my screen. There you go. Okay. All right. Can you see it? Is it okay?
Yes, Father, it's already flashing po.
All
Yeah.
right, good. I'd like to
Yes.
begin by asking you some questions. First, no, do you feel emotionally drained by your daily work? No, do you feel that you are at the end of your patience at the end of the day? Ubus na. Do you feel that you are not having positive influence on the lives of others? May mga ganung drama din. Do you feel that you don't really care, no, about what happens to some people under you? If your answer is yes to any of these questions, then you're under stress. And it's very common during this time of the pandemic. These questions were taken from the widely used burnout inventory by Maslow. But what is stress? Stress is a condition or feeling experienced when a person perceives that demands exceed the personal and social resources that one is able to mobilize. Now you have to understand, my dear friends, every transition is a crisis. No, every transition is a source of stress, and especially during this pandemic, this is really a kind of a transition for everybody, from the old normal to the new normal. I don't know if you felt it at the beginning. People were still hoping that we could go back to the old normal. People were not really preparing for the new normal because everybody was hoping that we could go back to the way it was before. But apparently, we're not going there very soon. So we're preparing ourselves to the new normal, especially how, like, how do we do things this time? How about online learning? How do we transfer translate our work experience to an online experience? All these things. So a lot of sources of stress, and because of the transition, and it can be really jarring for many of us, stressful and isolating for some. It may cause big emotions for some people, shock, grief even, and demotivation. A lot of people have expressed that they are demotivated these past months. Again, because they don't know what to do, because they are disoriented. Dear friends, this experience of the pandemic, is an experience of disorientation. And in all levels, we are not prepared for this. I don't think anyone is prepared for this. So everyone has been disoriented, taken out from our comfort zones. And we begin to ask a lot of questions. So, my dear friends, if we experience a sort of disorientation, then we are invited to a kind of reorientation. So we begin to question what we truly value, what is most essential in our lives, what truly matters in our lives. No, in the past 3 months, we have realized that we can actually live only with the essentials, and we have also realized that those occupations, professions that were used to be taught as ordinary, as secondary, are actually now the primary, the frontliners. For example, the people at the restaurants, the food industry, people at the gasoline stations, people at the banks, people working in the supermarkets and in the maintenance and facilities and utilities. So there's a kind of reorientation. We are invited to a kind of reorientation. And so, my dear friends, how do we approach this reorientation? I propose 3 ways. In the spirit of, or in the field of spirituality, I'd like to offer 3 simple ways, and which I think would be very applicable and practical for all of us. So number 1 is to seek meaning. That's very basic but very important. We learn to seek meaning this time. Number 2, to belonging. And number 3, finding God. So these 3 ways, in order as we experience this kind of reorientation, no? So how do we approach this reorientation? Because a lot of people are demotivated, a lot of people are stressed out, a lot of people are tired, exhausted, no, of online jobs and a lot of difficulties during this time. So I propose 3 ways in the reorientation. Number 1, seeking meaning. No? Earlier, Miss Sena mentioned about it's important that we find our purpose. No, this is Stephen Covey, and to always know the whys. No, meditate on the whys. Why am I doing this? Is this actually necessary? So again, this is in knowing the whys, we are able to know what we truly value, what is really essential in our lives. And then we realize that all this time, before the pandemic, we have actually taken for granted the most essentials in our lives. For example, family, you know, for example, friends, relationships, and even faith. A lot of people now are going back to prayer. A lot of people now are going back to spirituality. So it's very important that we know the reason why we are doing things. And number two, I realized since I am working with young people, this is very important. This is the most practical advice I give to young people who are demotivated, students who are, walang gana, wala na, kasi wala na silang, nabago yung schedule nila eh. Nasira yung routine nila. So therefore, kung nasira ang routine, again, from disorientation to reorientation, we need to set new routines. It's going to be very helpful, especially for young people. If you have young people in the house, you need to provide a set of new routines for them. For example, at this time, this is what you're going to do. At this time, this is what you're going to do. Because once they find the whys in what they do, they have this sense of purpose and they find meaning in what they do. Otherwise, we become demotivated when we do not know the meaning why we do things. So it's very important that we set routines. And what about new routines? What about new routines? Since your former schedule was destroyed completely, now you have to start forming anew and set your new routines and try to find meaning in what you do. And number three, it will be helpful also to explore and learn something new. Because in learning something new, we discover our uniqueness, we discover our giftedness. You will realize that you are actually able to do something that you never thought you could actually do before, right? And you realize, oh, kaya ko palang gawin. And the moment you realize that you can do something new, something worthwhile, you feel good about yourself. And then your self-esteem becomes better. Importante kasi yung self-esteem. People who are demotivated usually have very low self-esteem. And it's important that once you discover new things about yourself, new things that you can do, then you feel good about yourself. And the more you feel good about yourself, the more you do good. So it's very important to seek meaning, to seek purpose. Number two is to belong, belonging. As social beings, we need to belong, especially during this time. Very important, I suggest that we identify our home team. Ano ba yung home team? You see, some of us might know a lot of people because of our work, especially ako, pare, ang dami kong kilala, But I need a home team. Sino yung home team? Sila yung inner circle na pwede kong tawagan at sabihin kong pagod na ako ngayon. Can I talk to you right now? These are the people who will understand you as you are, who will not judge you. These are the people who will understand you. These are the people who will listen to you, to your complaints, who will provide food for you when you need it, who will even challenge you, who will even get angry at you. Identify your home team. It's very important that each of us, during this time of the pandemic, we have a home team, a support group, and more people more people are having kind of a home team experience, and the more they experience healing, and the more they become motivated. Number two, disconnect to connect. Technology has connected us to distant people, but somehow has disconnected us to the people near us, right? So sometimes, if before the pandemic, you will see at the restaurants, family eating at the restaurant, families eating at the restaurant, and then they're supposed to be talking and conversing, and yet they were texting each other. Similarly, among friends also. And during this time, it's important that, especially to the people near us at home, our friends, to spend time, no, to disconnect, to connect, to to um, to to have a face-to-face encounter as well. Ngayon nga kasi because we cannot go out, and that's why we have an online. A lot of our things are done online. So we value all the more. We realize napaka-importante pala ng face-to-face experience, no? We miss our workmates, our students, the people we serve, the people under our care. Iba pa rin talaga ang experience ng face-to-face. And so now we value it more. And so if we have chances, opportunities to spend really quality time with the people we value and we love, we have to, no? So we have to disconnect and to connect, because iba pa rin yung experience ng personal encounter with each other. And then number 3, seek healing, both personal and relational. During this time of the crisis, a lot of us are under stress. And kapag under stress tayo, it brings out the worst in us. It opens our past wounds, our brokenness. And true enough, all of us, we have our past histories, our wounded past. We all have that. And during this time, a lot of people are going back to their woundedness. No, lately I've been counseling a lot of people online, because it's the first time these memories are coming back to them. So this is the time that we can actually seek for healing, both personal and relational. It's time to forgive people that who has caused us pain, to forgive our past, and to forgive ourselves. It's time to free our hearts in order for us to move on, no? And for us to be able to love again, no? Sa mga broken-hearted, in order for us to learn to love again, no? And you realize that our heart is amazing, no? Our person, the human spirit is amazing. We can experience so much pain in life, but we can actually move on. No, that's the miracle of the human spirit, no? So we can seek healing. Importante yung healing, hindi lang personal but also relational. And then lastly, no, find God. Find God. I belong to the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. No, the Jesuit spirituality, or the Ignatian spirituality, is really finding God in all things. Finding God in all things. Gerard Manley Hopkins, one of our Jesuit poets, wrote a poem, and the first line goes something like this: "The world is charged with the grandeur of God. The world is charged with the grandeur of God." And a friend of mine translated that in Filipino, and for me it was more beautiful, no? And sabi niya, itinitibok ng mundo ang kaluwalhatian ng Diyos. Wow, it was, para sa akin, napakalino nun, no? Every atom, every molecule in the universe, every cell, every existence, no, is charged. When you say charged, alive, pulsating, throbbing, vibrating with God's presence. And our task is to find God in that. To find God in all things. To find God even in crisis. To find God even in difficult moments. Even in His seeming absence. Even during this time of the pandemic. So number 1, it's important for us to make space for personal prayer. During this time of the pandemic, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people are coming back. No, even those who claim that they are not very religious, they are coming back to some personal space, to some personal meditation, to some personal prayer, and to talk to the Supreme Being, to God, to Jesus, to Allah, to be able to be connected once again to God. It's very important that in order for us to be motivated, that we have this personal space, sacred space, where we can be in communion, in union with our God. And number 2 is to find God in crisis. It's very difficult, though, to find God in difficult moments. It's easier to find God in joy, in success, in triumphs. But in difficult moments, it's very hard to find God in difficult moments. But for us Christians, Jesus Christ suffered, appropriated to himself all the sufferings of humanity. And so every time we suffer, God is with us. A lot of people are asking, nasaan ang Diyos ngayon? Nasaan ang Diyos? Nasaan ang Diyos sa kahirapan ng mundo? Nasaan ang Diyos sa krisis? Sinasabi ko lagi na ang Diyos ay nandun. Nandun sa daan, humihingi ng pagkain. Ang Diyos ay nandun. Nandun nagtatrabaho sa ospital. Ang Diyos ay nandun sa mga relief operations. Ang Diyos ay nag-overtime sa food industry ngayon. Because God is with us. And God is in our suffering, and God is present in the people who suffer. So it's very important that we are able to find God even in difficult moments. That God is with us in our suffering. And then number 3, realize that all is gift and be grateful. I think this is very important, no? This is the key in spirituality. You see, the moment we realize that everything is gift, nothing is really ours. The moment we realize that everything I have right now, my profession, my possession, that these are gifts from God. Even the people I love, the family I have, my siblings, my parents, and even my own life. The moment we realize that all is gift, including my very own life, that these are not mine, then we become free. We become free, and what is the result of that? Gratitude. And in my experience, the happiest people I know are the people who are grateful. And so therefore, the secret to a happy life, a happy spiritual life, is a grateful heart. And that is the secret to happiness. Now, the secret to a lonely, miserable life, I'll tell you, and it's very easy, ingratitude. The moment we start being ungrateful, the moment we start, looking for things that we don't have instead of what we have, the moment we start comparing ourselves to others, we forget the gifts that we have, even our own very life, the very breath, the people we love, then we become ungrateful. But the secret to a happy, contented spiritual life is gratitude. It's very simple, no? But again, it's the most effective way to have a healthy spirituality. To realize that I have a God who has gifted me. I have a God who has blessed me beyond my imagination. And the result of that, my dear friends, is gratitude. Yung puso natin, aapaw yan. Aapaw at aapaw yan sa iba. No? And I always when I do counseling and do confession, whenever I meet a person who is demotivated, who is discouraged, I just ask the person, is there someone in your life right now whom are you grateful for? And then the person starts to cry. And then you see the face changes. And then he becomes grateful. And then he starts to move on. The moment we realize that everything we have is from God, no? And everything is gift, and I'm gifted, then I become grateful. So this is the secret to a happy spiritual life. So my dear friends, I propose to you 3 ways, 3 very simple ways. I mentioned parang long homily lang ito, no? So first is to seek meaning. Seek meaning. Seek your purpose. Importante talaga yung sense of purpose, no? Kasi the moment you know your purpose, you feel good about yourself. No? Meron kang sense of meaning as a person. And second, to belong. Importante talaga to belong because we are social beings, no? We have to love and be loved. We need to belong. And number 3 is to find God in all things. To even especially even in crisis in difficult moments. So, my dear friends, thank you for listening. I think that's enough, and it's very simple. And I'd like to end with a quote from a letter, St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. God bless you all.
Thank you for that, Father Ro. It's
Yeah.
very insightful, and I mean, like, we never had this chance to realize a lot of things until this pandemic reality really came in. I just have like a rejoinder question lang on. I mean, it really struck me most on your points on being grateful. I mean, if grateful is really inherent in our nature,
Mhm.
I mean, like, why did we come to a point that we actually nearly lose that? And just right now, we're trying to realize na it's really important to be grateful. So, was there anything that has been very instrumental that actually preoccupied us of a lot of stuff
Yeah, yeah.
that we actually have forgotten the very basic essence of being grateful? What would be your thoughts on that, Father?
Thank you, Ben, for that wonderful question. I think it's very important because the reality is we forget. Kahit ako pare, I can still forget. You know, we forget, and that's why we need to be reminded all the time. We need to be reminded. That is why our founder, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, taught us a wonderful prayer. I'd like to share to you that kind of prayer. No, it's a very ordinary kind of prayer. How do we do that? It's called the examen. And what is the examen? The examen is a 5 or 10 minute prayer that you end, what that you do at the end of the day. So spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes before sleeping, just being alone, meditating, and ask this question: what am I most grateful to God for today? If you can name five, then that's okay. And Saint Ignatius said, you have to be very specific. You don't just say, Lord, I thank you for the gift of life, gift of family. No, for the day. For example, I can say tonight, Lord, ang sarap ng kape kaninang umaga. Iba yung lasa. Naalala ko yung amoy. Ang sarap nun. Salamat, Lord, sa kape. I can also say, Lord, salamat kanina sa isang kasama ko sa bahay na tinulungan akong buhatin yung gamit ko. Kasi mag-isa lang ako kanina eh. Nakita niya ako, tinulungan niya ako. Thank you, Lord. Lord, thank you for that text I got from a friend of mine. Unexpectedly, after 10 years, nag-text siya. Lord, thank you. I think it was you who really inspired that person to text me. Saint Ignatius said, when you're grateful to God, you have to be very specific. And then you recall that particular gift. And then if you do this, if you do this, 21 days consecutively every night, gratitude becomes your hindi na siya parang feeling. Gratitude becomes a disposition. I don't know if you met people who are just grateful, no? Yun yung disposition nila sa buhay. It's like gratitude is like this pair of glasses. When you use it, it changes the way you look at reality. It changes the way you look at things. The people without this gratitude glass will look at reality differently. But if you have it, wow, it's different. It's really a kind of a mental framework, and you have to have that. That's why you need to make it a habit by doing it consecutively for 21 days. That prayer I told you, just mention 5 things you are grateful for to God during the day for 21 days, and I'll tell you, you come back to me and tell me. It's very effective.
Thank you for that, Father. And I would assume that there will be questions coming up for us later to discuss in the open forum. So, Father, thank you for this wonderful
Thank you,
insight. So, for the meantime, yes,
yes.
we will proceed to our next speaker to highlight more on what was his motivation secret being a civic volunteer. May we call on Mr. Neric Bada Jr.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me, guys? Okay. So, alam nyo nga, sabi nga ni Father kanina, no? Ang pinaka maganda, kumbaga yung happiness is have a grateful heart. Actually, this is my, I want you to share about my experience, no? For being a civic leader or a civic servant. Since also I'm a public servant for almost 20 years, ganon din yung level ng aking pagiging civic servant. So, ano ba yung mga bagay na pinaka-important factors na nakakapag-motivate based on my own experience? Alam mo yung first and foremost nga, tama-tama yung pagiging happy, no? Every time. Hindi naman siguro, alam niyo naman ang buhay, ups and downs, may low, may high key, ganyan. Pero always remember, sabi nga ni Father Roseller, I quote, happiness is have a grateful heart. First and foremost, every day, especially kapag meron tayong mga projects or meron tayong mga activities that I can encounter, na na-encounter natin sa buhay natin. Especially in public, for example. First and foremost, what motivates me is to pray. I actually pray first. Pray for my own safety, pray for my own safety of my family, pray for the safety of my, alam nyo, yung mga taong tinutulungan natin, especially for that. Alam nyo, sa pagiging civic servant kasi rampadora tayo Kumbaga parang daig natin si Dora Rat. Rampa dito, rampa doon, punta dito, punta doon, merong tree planting dito, may magti-train tayo ng livelihood dito, magiging speaker tayo, motivational speaker tayo kung saan-saan. Always pray for that. I always look to God na pray. And isa pa kasi, I usually look at the bright side of life every day. Kasi lalo na sa panahon ngayon na actually marami akong dapat pagpasalamat every day na mas nakakapag-motivate sa akin na tumulong sa ibang tao. Especially if you have your experience. Not just by way of theory, but for the experience itself. Yung bang, alam mo kasi iba yung definition ng sympathy tsaka ng empathy, di ba? Kapag kasi once na pumunta ka sa isang project site, you feel the experience, you feel empathy with them. Paano kapag dumating yung araw na sa mga immersions na naranasan mo na tumira sa isang napaka-devastated na community? You are going to put your shoes sa kanila. Minsan kasi if you are going to look at the bright side of life, mas nakaka-motivate yung nagpapasalamat ako kasi iba yung experience ko sa experience nila. And of course, syempre, nakakatuwa din minsan yung tipo na, alam niyo yon, yung mga tipo na, let's say for example, yung nakakamiss you have lots of memories. Isa pa sa nakaka-motivate yun na 20 years from the beginning of my service as a civic servant, civic volunteer or civic leader. Minsan kasi yung mga memories na kung paano ako nagsimula, kung paano rin ako naka-achieve ng mga ganitong bagay, kung paano ko narating yung mga goals ko, kung paano ko natulungan yung maraming tao. Actually, hindi ko na nga po mabilang kung ilan sila Especially sa mga taong minsan kapag nagtotalk ako sa mga community na tinutulungan namin sa iba't ibang lugar, actually hindi lamang po dito sa Pilipinas, kundi minsan napapasabag tayo sa pagkarampadora din natin sa ibang bansa just to help. Actually, yung mga magagandang experience, yung mga happy moments, happy experiences na talagang naranasan mo kung paano mabuhay sa isang indigenous group, sa mga taong medyo, alam nyo na, yung mga medyo kapuspalad. So minsan kasi, ano yun kumbaga parang nakaka-motivate na, bakit ba ako magrereklamo? Ano ba yung question ko? My question for myself bakit ako magrereklamo kung ganito lang ang problema ko? Samantalang yung ibang tao, mas marami silang problema. Mas marami silang pinagdadaanan. Minsan nga, actually, instead of comedy, let's say for example, you just laugh it off. Pero minsan sa mga experiences ng mga taong nakakahalubilo ko, minsan nakaka-MMK, maalaala mo kaya. It's very tear-jerking experience po. Especially dun talaga sa mga tao na minsan pumunta ka sa isang lugar na walang-wala sila. So syempre talaga minsan, if they are talking about their experiences, talaga minsan naturally, pag nagsasalita ako to them or nagbibigay ako ng introduction, nakakaiyak na. Kasi I felt, kumbaga parang na-empathy ko sila, na-feel ko talaga yung mga bagay na pinagdadaanan nila. Anyway, shout out nga pala po dun sa mga taong nakikinig sa akin ngayon. Nagko-comment po kayo. Anyway, this is thank you for coming po. Especially dun sa mga youth na dumaan po sa buhay ko. Maraming salamat sa inyong pagdalo. And of course, aside from being motivation, alam ba yung mga iba pang sikreto ko no, na nakakapag-motivate sa akin? Alam nyo, one time, kasi pag bumibisita din ako sa ibang lugar, 'di ba? Syempre minsan sasabihin mo, ay paulit-ulit na lang, 'di ba? Taon-taon ganyan. Pero different, alam niyo sa totoo lang, kahit paulit-ulit mong puntahan ng isang lugar, kasi gusto mong puntahan kasi mas nabibigyan ako ng motivation because nakikita ko yung development at nakikita ko yung progress ng isang community o yung development and progress ng ibang tao. Especially once na mga taong dumaan sa buhay mo na talagang fully na experience mo yung mga kung ano man yung mga bagay na nakakapag-demotivate sa kanila, and then you see happy faces. Tapos alam mo yung word na kamusta? 'Di ba? Alam mo yung kamustahin ka lang kahit sabihin mo na wala namang kailangan or what. Simpleng kamusta lang, especially in times of this pandemic. Talaga pong well appreciated ko po yung mga bagay na yan. Especially right now. Kasi iba na pong buhay natin eh. So far, ngayon, although, syempre, I'm also a traveler, mahilig din po akong mamasyal sa mga nature, sa mga beach, sometimes just to relax yourself. Kasi nga minsan, alam niyo naman tayo eh, ako din lang po mismo. For 20 years in my service, tao lang din naman po ako. Pero ano lang ba naman yung pinakamahalagang word na kamusta na po? Kamusta ka po? 'Di ba? Actually ngayon yung word na yan napakalaking bagay na po yan sa akin eh. Aside from mahal kita, syempre minsan yung mahal kita nakakapagpakilig, 'di ba? Or let's say for example na kamusta ka? How are you? Or maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga taong dumaan po sa buhay ko. Sa lahat po ng mga taong natulungan ko, sa lahat po ng mga nagsabing maraming salamat. Actually po, napakalaking bagay po sa akin yan para makapag-motivate po. Para po makapag-motivate po. If I'm going to look at the bright side of it, the bright side of life, napaka-blessed ko po talaga. At saka po, isa po, andyan po kayo lagi for me na minsan konting chika, ganyan, sa panahon ngayon. At saka, that still motivates me na tumulong sa to the simplest and humblest way in our lives. Diyan po talaga yon. Actually, ito nga, ang dami nang nangangamusta, in fairness, Actually, I was talking to almost 400 people, 400 to 500, virtual nga lang. Kasi nasanay po kasi ako dati na you are lecturing or talking to different kinds of people. Actually po, maraming salamat po ngayon sa lahat ng mga nagpi-PM sa akin. Napakalaking bagay po talaga yan. Kahit po minsan, alam nyo, sa pagtulong, walang kapalit yan eh. Hayaan natin si God. Kasi po, blessed po tayo eh. Everyday po tayo. Everyday is a blessing. Especially now, pag bangon natin sa higaan, we could say good morning at least. Nalampasan natin yung pagsubok natin for a day. Especially for those people who are going to work. Actually, frontliner nga din po ko eh. Lahat na, inako ko na, lahat na, starring na po ako. Pero, ang nakaka-motivate lang kasi po dun talaga, yung mga taong sinisilbihan natin everyday. Especially yung mga taong alam natin na may mga pinagdadaanan and yet, nakakausap pa rin po natin sila face to face. Kahit may face mask. Kahit minsan nga, para kayo na rin kayo nag-iitbulaga eh. Yung tipong nag-uusap may plastic cover, o kaya minsan, pinagkakatawaan mo na lang yung mga kausap mo, bulaga, ginaganon mo na lang. But of course, nakaka-motivate din po yun talaga. Because we continue our service. I am not kasi po sa pagiging civil servant, sa ngayon, it's just kung ano man yung mga na-invite po ako, kung ano man po yung mga kailangan nilang tulong mula sa akin, by virtual lang naman po yun sa ngayon. But for now, para pa rin po akong nagsisilbi kasi public servant din po ako. Kumbaga, lahat ng mga taong dumarating sa opisina namin, I'm trying my best to serve them na as much as possible dapat kasi maging maging positive ka pa rin, maging masaya ka. So aside from praying to God, giving you some, let's say for example, yung mga taong nagpapasalamat sa iyo, sa lahat ng mga taong nangangamusta po, actually nakakapag-motivate po sa akin yan to do more better in life. Sabi nga, 'di ba? Kasi nga as experience mo nga, it brings happiness, self-fulfillment. So in other words, sabi nga ni Father Roseller, na talagang tumatak po talaga sa brain cells ko, we have a grateful heart. Especially po now, ngayon. I am not a techie person. I am a hands-on person. Pero yung mga effort po talaga ngayon, yung mga kagaya nito ng Runcation Philippines, yung mga AYLA, yung leaders, ngayon, they are trying our best to motivate. Diba? They are trying their give effort, 100% effort to motivate us, to motivate the people sa lahat po ng mga nakikinig sa atin. Diba? Nakakatulong din po ito. Ako nga rin po mismo minsan attending din po ako. I go to online classes or sometimes I just read or watch YouTube na talaga naman pong nakakapag-motivate sa akin to serve in my most simplest and humblest way. Minsan nga, kahit pagod na pagod ka or let's say for example, may konting down moment sa'yo, but when you see something or somebody na bigla na lang magpa-pop up sa messenger mo na, ay, meron po kaming award kasi po kung hindi po dahil sa turo ninyo, hindi po namin ma-achieve to. Actually, isa din yun sa mga nakakapag-motivate sa amin. Kumbaga, we go back to our roots. Kasi nga sabi nga nila, if you have happy memories in life, sabi ko nga, for almost 20, actually ang pinaka-award ko dyan yung experience ko 20 years. For my 20 years as a civic servant and as a public servant po, yun na po, napakalaking award na po at self-fulfillment na po sa akin yun. Hindi ko na nga rin po minsan matandaan kung sino-sino yung mga taong yun, pero once na they pop up in my message, maraming salamat po talaga. Minsan nga po nakakaluha din kumbaga tears of joy. Well, aside from experiences, memories, of course, pray to God, once na isa pa po talaga sa nakakapag-motivate din po is reading books. Actually, in this time of pandemic, syempre, sabi nga ni Kim Chu, bawal lumabas, di ba? Sabi nga nila, sa classroom nga daw may batas, bawal lumabas. Pero kami mga frontliner, pwedeng lumabas. Pero minsan, let's say for example, in our day off, I used to read books. Kasi aside from attending webinar, tataka nga po ako minsan, teki-teki na nga ako ngayon Kailangan kasi teki-teki na tayo ngayon dahil may Zoom, meron ng mga ganitong mga virtual, may mga webinar. Actually, learning motivates me to continue my service. Nakaka-motivate yun Especially right now. Ang dami kong natutunan kay Ma'am Sena at saka kay Father. Especially kay Father. Totoo talaga yun, mga kapatid. Yun talagang happiness is a grateful heart. Alam nyo nga, sabi nga dito sa libro, when you are, let's say for example, reading your own book, sabi nga dito, books are the most quietest and most constant of friends. They are the most accessible and wisest of counselors and the most patient of teachers. Totoo nga naman yon. Minsan kasi pag wala tayong makausap, let's say for example, syempre nga naman, very busy ang mga friendship natin in and out of the country, or meron din naman po silang pinagdadaanan. Alam niyo, isa sa mga best friend ko, libro eh. Libro. Buti na lang, teki-teki din dahil may ebook na. Actually, nakaka-motivate din po yan sa akin to continue. Because sabi nga nila, we don't stop learning. As a civic servant, we have to motivate and to don't stop learning. Kasi when the time comes na, let's say for example, na-invite na naman tayo, or let's say for example, na-invite tayong tumulong sa isang community project, at least kahit papano, we motivate ourselves. We motivate ourselves on how to inspire people. Ayan na naman po. Para na naman tayong barangay chairman na nagsasalita sa harapan ng mga madlang people. But syempre, pinaka-importante doon, of course, nakasmile lagi. Kahit anong pagod po. Kasi andun yung empathy ng puso natin na yung naranasan nila, nafe-feel natin at nararamdaman natin kung ano man yung karamdaman at nararanasan nila. Sana nga po I always used to keep praying on this na sana matapos na tong magkaroon na po tayo ng ng important solution dito sa pandemic. Because I really miss helping other people, especially dun sa mga malalayong lugar po. I used to, minsan nga sa ibang bansa, nosebleeding ang labanan, pero tulong pa rin ang laban, di ba? Kasi nga, sabi nga nila, importante yung kapwa natin, yung tinutulungan natin Kapwa po yun. And I think that's my experience for now as a civic leader. I hope na sa mga ka-civic leader ko dyan, shout out po sa inyo. Sana may matutunan po tayo sa akin kahit 1% lang. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Neric. And very exciting to really mention na it's really going back to the basics. At talagang yung pagtulong umaapaw dapat. Parang alam mo yun, hindi ka mawawala ng pag-asa along the line.
Mm-hmm.
Pero may isang question lang, Neric, like with all the energy na nakwento mo, was there a point na you really, I mean like of course, parang naubusan ka ba ng energy one time? Then paano ka bumalik ulit? Paano ka naging nag-get on track ulit?
Actually, first and foremost po, sa pagiging civic leader din, kasi syempre, tao lang din naman po tayo.
Correct.
First and foremost, siguro kapag may love life ka, hindi. People come to your life. Of course, meron talaga makakapagbigay sa'yo ng inspiration to give you going. Kahit let's say, for example, na iba yung field mo, iba yung field niya, iba yung field mo, minsan nagkakadebatehan kayo, or let's say for example, away, ganyan. But then if you just look at his face, di ba, physically, minsan pag yun pa lang parang nakaka-motivate na to get you going At saka pangalawa talaga yung mga experiences ng mga taong pinupuntahan natin. Yung mga taong pinagsisilbihan natin. Isa din po yun. Especially yung, di ba nga, yung dalawang word na pinaka-importante para mas nakakapag-high ng energy, yung tipong kamusta at maraming salamat. Tao sa puso po talaga yon. That makes me feel better.
So thank you for that, Neric. It was very helpful. Tumatak sa amin yung love life. So I think talagang importante din yan at sinabi din yan. Okay, so
diba
we'll wait and we will have questions for you later, for the open discussion. And right now, we will now proceed to the next speaker to also share the motivation secret din. Pero ito naman, very exciting to discuss as a person of films and arts. So we call in our speaker, Trent Asuncion, to discuss this in detail. Ano nga ba yung mga sekreto niya? Take it away, Trent.
Ayan, isang masining na gabi po para sa ating lahat. Before I share my story to all of you, I just want you to watch a 1-minute short film na ginawa namin back when I was in high school. So ayan, just leave a play po. And while waiting po dun sa short film, I just would like to thank lang Kuya Ben and Kuya Steve for inviting me to share my story. So kung hindi niyo po alam, isa rin si film industry sa pinaka-naapektuhan ng pandemic. Kaya, ayun, it's like a pleasure and privilege to me to share yung mga bagay and mga natutunan ko kung paano ko nakakasan yung mga mahihirap na pagdaanan ko. So, ayan. Ready na po for So, ayun lang, disclaimer po. So, bago nyo po mapapanood yung film, wala pa siya. So, ginawa namin yung short film na yan, not to join a competition or to win. Ayan, preparing. So, ginawa po namin to kasi nagkaroon ng new settings back when I was in high school. So, lahat nag-struggle kasi parang meron nangyari doon na road widening and then umabot yung tag-ulan, hindi siya natapos. So, nag-cancel ng mga klase kasi walang madaanan and then lahat nagkakaroon na ng problema kasi hindi makapunta sa school or sa palengke dahil maputik, ganyan. So, lahat sa social media very active para magreklamo, ganyan. So, tinap ko yung friend ko to help me make a short film wherein in our own little way, we can help our fellow Filipinos. So, ayan, seems ready na yata. So, enjoy watching.
Kahit tingin mo'y di na umiikot ang daigdig, kahit patuloy sa paghampas ng mga alon, ngumiti ka dahil kaya mong umahon. Ngiti lang, ngiti. Hindi ikaw ang pinakamalas sa mundo. Ngumiti ka at ipamalas mo sa lahat ng sumisira sa'yo. Kaya mong tumayo, kaya mong bumangon mula sa pagkadapa, kaya mong harapin ang isang bagong umaga. Ngiti, ngiti lang. Ngiti lang dahil buhay ka pa. Ngiti lang dahil subigan niyo ka.
So, ayan. So, ayun po, siguro naman, based po sa napanood nyo, ang pinaka-gusto ko lang po talaga doon, in my own way, makatulong ako para at least makagaan lang sa mga kapwa ko subigan yung mga nangyayari noon sa amin. And dito siguro pumapasok yung secret na tinanong sa akin as a filmmaker or a person of arts. Ano yung secret ko para maging motivated ako every time na nakakaranas ako ng problem? Siguro po dalawang bagay lang. First is yung passion. Pangalawa is yung advocacy. So, pag-usapan natin yung bakit po passion. Kasi po una, naniniwala ako na pag gusto mo talaga yung isang bagay, never kang susuko. Yes, mapapagod tayo kasi normal naman yun lalo na ginagawa natin yung best natin, we are determined para ma-achieve yung goal natin. Kaya normal lang mapagod. Pero if you really love what you're doing, hindi mo maiisip sa sarili mo mag-quit or sumuko. So, another way is that siguro napagtakahan nyo, I am a teacher by profession, then I'm doing filmmaking or I'm doing films. And the only reason is that kasi po, pangarap ko simula high school pa lang ako na maging isang film director. Kaya I find ways kung paano ako makagawa ng pelikula. So, sumasali ako ng mga workshop, ng mga seminar, yung mga free, ganyan. Sumasali rin po ako ng mga film festival para at least ma-widen lang yung connection ko and network ko sa paggawa ng film. And ngayon, nakakatuwa na maraming tao yung tumutulong sa akin. So, I'm not a graduate of film or any communication-related course. Kaya sobrang overwhelming na at my young age, nakakagawa ako ng film na hindi lang dahil gusto kong gumawa, it's because I want to tell stories. Kasi naniniwala ako na yung story na pwedeng mapanood ng maraming tao can change one's life or can inspire many. So in that, papasok na yung advocacy ko. And it all started there back when I was in high school. Yung mantra ko na para sa sining, para sa bayan, para sa Diyos. So dito na po papasok yung advocacy na kung saan I'm not the typical Gen Z na very active sa social media, very out sila mag-express ng mga feelings nila through ay sa mga current issues, political, ganyan. So ako po, sa paraan ko, ginagamit ko yung film para ma-express ko yung sarili ko. And gusto kong, dito ko nasasabi ko ano yung gusto kong, kung ano yung stand ko sa isang current issue, ganyan. Katulad ko nung nakaraan, since pandemic nga, then film industry yung isa sa pinaka-naapektuhan since may physical distancing, sobrang hirap kami mag-shoot. So ang tinanong ko sa sarili ko, dito na ba natatapos yung pangarap ko or paggawa ng film? So sabi ko, hindi. So kaya kinausap ko yung isang friend of mine. Sabi ko, gawa tayo ng short film na tutulong tayo mag-campaign sa yes to mass promotion, sa mass promotion. So since physical distancing nga, di kami makapag and ECQ, hindi kami makapag-shoot. So gumawa kami ng animated film. So from that, nilaban namin siya sa isang film festival. Hindi dahil para manalo, pero bonus na lang dahil nanalo kami. Ang pinaka-way namin ay yung film festival kasi yung isa platform na rin para at least mas maraming tao yung mapanood kung ano yung gusto naming iparating sa iba't ibang yun sa current issue na kinakaharap nga ng bansa natin, lalo na sa mga estudyante, lalo na ako ay teacher by profession. So in that way nakatulong ako. So aside from that trend, yung secret nga, I just want to share a story lang back when I was in high school. Yung nag-start pa lang ako gumawa ng film. Kasi kinausap ko yung mga kaklase ko, sabi ko, gawa tayong film din tayo sa isang film festival. Then pinanood namin, or hindi namin pinanood, napanood ng isang group of people sa Olongapo or here. Tas sobrang nilait nila, yung parang sinabihan kami agad na basura, walang kwenta, hindi kayo mapipili, hindi kayo, walang sense, parang ganun po. Sobrang nakaka-down. Pero tinanong ko yung sarili ko nun sabi ko, bakit ko ba to ginagawa? At para kanino ko to ginagawa? Tapos dun na nag-start yung mantra ko nga na para sa sining, para sa bayan, at para sa Diyos. Kaya lahat po ng ginagawa ko, kung mapapansin niyo po, yung mga films, yung mga films na ginagawa ko, lahat po yan sumasagot sa mga current issues or nagtatakal ng mga current issues natin. And yun nga, as a youth, hindi naman ako mayaman para makapagbigay ng pera para makatulong. So in my own way, nakagawa ako ng paraan paano maka-inspire ng maraming tao and paano ako maka-help sa country natin in my own way na. And then naniniwala rin po kasi ako na kapag yung isang bagay, parang pag-ibig nga, 'di ba? Bakit mo susukuan yung taong mahal mo, 'di ba? So kung mahal mo talaga yung ginagawa mo, hindi ka susuko. And from there, nag-start ako mag-film. Tapos, ang daming criticisms din dahil nga bago ako. And then, wala talaga akong experience pa. Ginagawa ko yung criticism na yun as a good judgment rin for me to be better. Sabi nga nung isang author yung nabasa ko sa isang book, if you want to double your success rate, double your failure rate, it doesn't mean naman na you need to make mistakes or para lang matuto ka. Pero from there, kailangan mo talaga matuto not to prove to them na tama sila, ay na mali sila. Wala kang dapat patunayan sa kanila. So, akin, kaya ko ginagawa yon na good criticism for me kasi gusto kong patunayan sa sarili ko na kaya ko. At kaya kong magpatuloy kahit maraming problema, kahit maraming sumasagabal sa pangarap ko. Ayun. So, ayun lang. So, yun po yung pinaka-struggle ko as a filmmaker. Lalo na nga rin ngayon na hindi kami makapag-shoot, super hirap. And then, lagi ko lang sinasabi po, ito lang, I just want to remind everybody, sa lahat ng nanonood, lalo na sa mga kapwa ko Gen Z, na kailanman hindi magiging sagot ang pagsuko sa pagkamit ng tagumpay. Always find reasons for you to keep going. Parang katulad lang yan ng pagtanong sa sarili mo. Ako, kapag down na ako, kapag hindi ko na alam kung saan pa ako hugot ng lakas para magpatuloy, lagi ko lang po tinatanong yung sarili ko na, bakit ko ba to ginagawa? And para kanino ko to ginagawa? So from there, kapag nung nasasagot ko yung mga tanong niya, every time na nagda-down talaga ako, sinasagot ko lang yung tanong na yun. And from there, ang daming bagay na pumapasok sa isip ko para magpatuloy. And yun nga, saka po ako Gen Z, sa mga kabataan na pag-asa ng bayan, huwag tayong susuko sa pagkamit ng mga problema huwag tayong susuko sa pagkamit ng mga goals natin para ma-reach yung tagumpay, yung success, but rather find ways to solve problems na kinakaharap natin kasi maraming bagay dyan sa paligid-giligid na magbibigay sa ng inspirasyon at motibasyon para magpatuloy. So, ayun lang po. I hope you learn something from my story. So, wala akong masyadong ma-share pa kasi I'm just 22. So, very young pa po. I have no experience yet na marami unlike them. So, ayun po. Thank you po.
Okay, Trent, thank you very much. And my God, sobrang lalim. I mean, just to get lang key highlights on what you have said. Ngumiti ka lang, kaya mong umahon. Tapos again, we want to recall the line that you have said, oo nga naman, bakit mo susukuan ng mahal mo, di ba? So it goes again with the love life. Pero what really struck me most is yung sinabi mo, like, kanino mo to ginagawa? Para sa singing, para sa bayan, at para sa Diyos. And ito, Trent, I think it's not of your age that you're young, but I mean, the valuable lessons that you have shared is very mind-blowing in the sense that it gives inspiration to others. And don't worry, bale mo yung mga isa sa mga speakers or mga umattend sa forum na to mag-collaborate for future projects, particularly for your filmmaking. I mean, all out. Hindi man kami hindi naman kami siguro nalalayo sa henerasyon mo, pero naniniwala kami na sa tulong ng sining talagang mas mapahayag mo yung yung advokasya, your passion to really make a difference. So thank you for that Trent. And we pause for for a while on your end, and then we will be readying questions in our open forum in a while. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we proceed to the next speaker. That he will be. This is a good friend of mine, and he will be sharing his motivation journey on being a servant leader, like knowing the ups and downs of the trade. So may I now call on my good friend of mine, the president of Meralco Foundation, Mr. Jeffrey Tarayao. Hello, Jeff. Take it away.
Hello, Ben, and to everybody who's online. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff. It's loud and clear.
Okay, good. Let me just fix something I'd like to share with you. There you go. So, good evening to all of you. It's a genuine pleasure to be with all of you tonight. This is perhaps the latest presentation I have ever made. So I won't blame you if you get to sleep. I might instead appear in your dreams. But thank you again for the privilege of sharing some of my thoughts with all of you tonight. 5 days before the lockdown started last March, I celebrated my 40th birthday. Life indeed begins at 40. I just did not expect that it will be this kind of life, this new normal. I never expected we will experience this in our lifetime. So to console myself, I began watching movies that depict long-term survival. First movie I saw was Exodus, Gods and Kings, and remembered how the Israelites endured their stay in Egypt for 4 generations, or probably 430 years. And then another 40 difficult years of wandering in the desert. And then, closer to home, my love for Filipino movies led me to watch again the digitally remastered epic of Peke Galiaga, Oro, Plata, Mata, Gold, Silver, Death, which was originally released in 1982, set in Negros Occidental during World War II. It tells the story of how 2 haciendero families cope with the changes brought about by the war. And we know how this war changed the lives of Filipinos forever. Lastly, I finally had the chance to read this book, Rampage, MacArthur, Yamashita, and the Battle of Manila by James Scott, which was Amazon's best book in history in 2018. You know, before World War II, Manila was a city of swimming pools, of golf courses, and buildings nestled under thick green canopies of trees. But by the time the war was over, much of our beloved city was destroyed, and probably an estimated 100,000 civilians had died. How did Filipinos live during those terrible 3 years? Paano kaya sila nabuhay noon? Katulad kaya ng buhay natin ngayon? In some sense, these stories can be a parallel to our current state of life. Ang sarap naman ng buhay, pero bigla tayong pinatigil. And one of my realizations is that all of these experiences of hardships, of war, of this pandemic, of survival, are moments of cleansing. Parang nililinis tayo. Parang pinipiga tayo para makita natin kung ano talaga ang mga pinaka-importanting bagay sa buhay natin. And this is one of the consistent lessons in my own personal motivation journey, to see sacrifice and suffering as moments of cleansing. Each time there is hardship, we rarely realize that we are being purified, that we are being cleansed. You know, I was born in a struggling family. My father was a family driver, and my mother was a sales lady in a handicraft store in Manila. For 28 years of my life, we lived in the driver's quarter of my father's employer. Despite their meager salaries, they were able to give us a good education. We can only return the favor and pay it forward by performing in our jobs very well. My parents taught me that our jobs are extensions of God's work, and we must be able to deliver what we ought to do with integrity and with a strong sense of gratitude. Today, my work has brought me to our coastlines and to our cities and to the remotest barangays in islands and mountain communities. And what did I see? Poverty most everywhere. There is no more tragic illustration of this state than a child whom you see but will not get the education which will enable him or her to rise above destitution. So my work in poverty alleviation has become my life. So I went around and engaged various stakeholders and partners, bring together solutions on the table, and help empower these local actors to incite positive change in their own communities. I have been involved in access to education, utilizing IT for learning, enterprise development, environmental sustainability, and most recently, providing electricity to thousands of poor households in remote island schools, which may otherwise be doomed to darkness. All of these were a journey of discovery and preparation. And the fruits of that journey are best seen today when we have discovered our gifts in our own respective fields. These gifts, though, do not come for free. I'm sure we all had the price to pay. We sacrificed a lot to be able to reach this stage. Last year, in my Netflixing, I had the chance to see the movie The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, which is based on the true story of William Kamkwamba, a 13-year-old schoolboy living in a small village in Malawi, Africa, and comes from a family of farmers. William spends his free time looking through the local junkyard of salvageable electronic components. One day, he is banned from attending school because his parents was unable to pay his tuition fees. But William would negotiate with his science teacher into letting him continue to attend his classes and have access to the school's library where he learns about electrical engineering and energy production. When drought and famine have devastated William's village, it led to riots over government rationing. People soon begin abandoning the village, and William's sister elopes with his former teacher in order to leave her family one less mouth to feed. Maybe to better appreciate the story, here are some selected scenes from the movie.
How does it feel, William? I never went to secondary school. Make us proud.
Hey, looking sharp, eh?
You too, man.
Kachokolo is not the wealthiest school in the district, but it's down to each one of you to decide your own level of commitment.
Commitment!
The rains came late this year, and now the trees are gone.
Malawi is preparing for a very long, hungry season.
Ukali muntu wa mkulo sopana William. Palibe amene yanga titandize.
What are you going to do? Anything new?
It's a pump.
Can you fix it?
Maybe. Mr. Kachigunda, when you turn the wheel on your bike, the light shines. How?
It's magnets.
I can bring water. I know how to do it.
Pano papalibe za kuskolo.
We stay, we die.
No. With the electricity, we can plant in the dry season.
Antu wakufa kudziwa zimenezo? Tiri mapo! Tiri mapo!
Malusiwa, adzaleka liti.
Zita kutaka. Ngati Mungu anditandiza. Wale watawa baba ndilibeza kulota.
William, seeking to save his village, planned to build a windmill to power an electric water pump that he had scavenged earlier. He built a small prototype which worked successfully, but to build a larger windmill, William asked his father for permission to dismantle the family bicycle for parts. That bicycle is the only bicycle left in the village and the family's last major asset. His father believes the exercise is futile and destroys the prototype. However, after intervention from William's mother, William and his father reconcile, and with the help of his friends and the remaining members of the village, they built a full-size wind turbine, which leads to a successful crop being sown. William's story taught us many lessons. In a way, it reminded me of my own personal struggles during my younger years. Life meant coping with the challenges despite modest means, relying on God-given talent, hard work, and a passionate determination to succeed. Passion for excellence, passion to compete. My struggling family experience taught me to believe that depth of commitment can overcome lack of resources, that the spirit of purpose can give impetus to human energy, that the power of ambition can set heroic goals and achieve them. However, the reality is that we will have successes and failures. This happens because ambition is one thing and execution another. Our failures teach us that we can survive and move on. The best antidote to failure is action, because the world out there is nothing if not a world of endless action, of choices made daily, of decisions taken constantly. I cannot hide the feeling of being sentimental when I turned 40 last March. And after almost 100 days of lockdown, what kind of motivation can we still get in this rough journey? And here are some of my thoughts. While there are certain events in our lives which are results not of our own doing, katulad nitong pandemic, we still have to make choices all the time. Doing nothing is also a choice. So let's be mindful of our choices. We must never abandon these choices. We must answer for them. We must be answerable to them. The main purpose of living is to turn ourselves into a beautiful and strong human being. We have to look after ourselves and try to look good always. It is our duty to live well with others, always share the joy, and never be the cause of another person's humiliation. Next, we must always be conscious of what our goals are, because our goals mirror our values. Make sure your values serve you well. Treat them as your personal defense and necessity. You know, living is essentially problem solving. Today, many of our solutions are formulated from new ways of looking and describing. Somehow, we must sometimes redescribe our own lives. I think all of us must stay committed to improving ourselves by doing our jobs well and leading our organizations with integrity. My mentor always reminds me to trust my instincts, to believe in myself, and to be brave, to be bold, and that find something that moves me. Take a stand for what's right, make a change. You may not always be popular, but you'll be part of something larger and greater than yourself. But we must also be forewarned. We will meet people who will seduce us and distract us with money, power, security, and perhaps most dangerously, a sense of belonging. Don't let them. I think it's not worth it. I think we can have genuine values and still get that job. We can have a conscience and still make money. Maybe for a final thought for tonight, if life meant a lot of suffering, we must remember that suffering breeds character, and character breeds faith. In the end, faith will never disappoint. So may all of us be men and women who harness the wind. May all of us be the wind beneath each other's wings. We must continue to hope for a better Philippines. Maraming salamat at magandang gabi sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much for that, Jeff. Very, very inspiring and moving. Particularly the words that you have mentioned, nililinis, pinipiga, para malaman kung ano ang importante sa buhay. I think like with this mindset, parang a popular question is, will the Philippines survive this crisis? Or we would have really, would we really move forward? Or this will stay for a while? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, 100 days pa lang tayong naka-lockdown. Our people survived 3 years of World War II without the gadgets, without delivery of goods and services to their homes. So, kung hindi tayo makakasurvive dito, yun ay dahil maarte lang tayo. So siguro, ang tinuro sa atin ng pandemic, bawasan yung kaartehan natin, di ba? Yung sinasabi ni Father Ro kanina,
actually, yes,
parang hindi naman nakulong, but ang naiwan sa atin ay yung mga importante sa atin. At tayo yung pumili nun, di ba? Kasi pwede naman tayo talagang lumabas kahit gusto nating magpahuli. Pero nanatili na lang tayo sa mga bahay natin, kasama yung mga pamilya natin. Kasi deep inside us, I think there is a really natural concern for others. There's a natural goodness to be able not only to protect ourselves, but to protect others as well. So we will survive kung babawasan natin ang kaartehan natin.
I totally agree with that. And actually, ito nga parang it's really going back to the basics. It's really eliminating a lot of the non-essentials along the line. So I think we will now be opening the topic, the open forum, just to have some questions, particularly for our viewers from Zoom. And anyone can actually answer this question. So this question came from Maricel Yutok. So the question was, I think some of these should answer, but you might want to add. So what will we do so that we can face the new challenges in the lives of this after this pandemic? So I mean, I think this the question is very broad on the new challenges. Let's siguro drill this down further. Number one, Filipinos are essentially very, how do you call it? Communitarian. They really want to have they have close gatherings, everything. So with this reality of social distancing, so how would we survive this? I mean, at the end of the day, any takers, Sen? Perhaps you could start this off.
Yes, Kuya Ben. How do we survive the new normal? Ika nga. So,
Yes.
as I've, yeah, so actually we are still on the trauma phase of the pandemic, and there's a lot of traumatic experiences for a lot of people. But to be able to carry on and to face the new normal, as I've said, we have first to look into ourselves. We have to prepare for that new normal because ang dami pa kasing uncertainty na pwedeng mangyari. But if you are prepared mentally, you are naka-mindset ka that you are mentally strong, you know how to cope with the challenges coming your way, whatever it is. Physically, you have to be prepared. So, lalo na sa physical, kasi if there's social distance, well, there's no such thing actually na social distancing. It's physical distancing already. You
Yeah,
can be
sorry, yeah.
socially that's all right, Kuya Ben, because you can still be able to socialize with a lot of people. It's again, quarantine is not an isolation. So we do physical distancing because that's to avoid the virus itself. But physical health is important as well. Kasi kung halimbawa, even if we are allowed to do Netflix pero hindi ka na natutulog, you'd be able to catch the virus. You'll be able to lower down your immune system. So these are just very basic, no, in preparation of the new normal. How prepared are you? So before we look outside of ourselves, outside of our homes, before we do a lot of blaming, let's look into ourselves first. Are we ready to face the new normal? Ano yung mindset natin? Ano yung basics for us, since we are also talking about the essential things in life? Yun po.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Sen. Jeff, you're in development work, right? So in terms of like these limitations, like for example, like you cannot, I mean, all of these government directives that you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So how do you think would organizations be effective also in delivering the service that's really mandated for them to do? So your thoughts on that?
Well, ever since the pandemic started, hindi rin naman kami natigil, no? It's just that there are two things that I've learned, no? First is one has to be extra sensitive this time. Because you're not only addressing a physiological need, no, para sa mga nagugutom, di ba? Yung mental at saka yung emotional stress din na nagagawa ng hindi pagiging sigurado sa nangyayari, 'di ba? Kaya nga yan ang challenge sa ating mga leaders, 'di ba? Ang leaders dapat na ituturo tayo sa yung mas confident na daan. Yung magiging confident tayo na mabubuhay tayo ng maayos despite the pandemic. That's the first one. The second one, and this is very difficult for many organizations. The pandemic taught us in development organizations to sometimes to let go of some things that we used to do. Diba? Meron, like kami, I lead one Meralco Foundation and our number one program is on electrification. But during the pandemic, somehow, iniwanan namin yun ng kaunti para i-address yung mas importante. Alam mo, yung lesson na yan ang hindi natin masyadong napagtutuunan ng pansin sa araw-araw na buhay. Sometimes, dahil nga gusto natin ma-advance yung agenda natin, agenda lang natin ngayon. Agenda lang natin yun. Ngayong may pandemic, na push yung idea no, we'll have to be stronger together. So some of us must be able to shed o iwanan yung mga pansarili nating pangangailangan para mabuhay naman yung iba. So, same with organization. So, First is sensitivity, extra sensitivity. Second is letting go. How do you let go?
Thank you for that, Jeff. Father, there's a question for you here regarding there was this time that parang like well, of course church are already open, but essentially parang most of us are used to really be more alam mo yun, like in a communitarian communitarian celebration. So how can you help or like give advice for the parishioners na parang this is the new normal pero I mean it's the same it's still the same celebration, it has still the same meaning, pero nagkataon lang na medyo may one seat apart ka, something like that. So alam mo like Filipinos are normally parang alam mo yun, a very knitted community. So how do we tell that to how do we give enlightenment to some na parang the entire ceremony, the entire meaning is still there with the with some changes, particularly on the distance, everything. Your thoughts on that, Father?
Maraming salamat, Ben. Actually, mahirap, Ben, no? Sobrang hirap kasi just imagine Quiapo, for example, no? I was assigned in Quiapo for a month as a deacon, no? When I was a deacon, I was assigned there, and sa Quiapo pa lang, there are 11 masses daily. Daily, and yung 11 masses sa Quiapo daily, puno yan. Puno yan. And paano ngayon? Paano makakasimba yung tao? Parang ang hirap i-imagine na hindi bumalik sa normal. At sa totoo lang, parang we are still hoping na we can go back to that. Especially us Filipinos na, halimbawa ngayon, paano pagsimbang gabi sa December, no? Halimbawa, nasa quarantine pa rin tayo and people really go to mass kapag simbang gabi. But the thing is, hindi ito first time, no? Even during yung Spanish flu, ano nangyari, na nagkaroon din ng ganitong situation and people have to prioritize health, no? And I'm sure the Lord wants us to be healthy, no? And this is a different situation, this is a different context, and I think people have to be patient. Sa ngayon, during the GCQ, open naman yung simbahan pero may social distancing. And the CBCP has issued the guidelines on how to attend mass with social distancing or physical distancing. Pero for those people who could not attend the mass, they can still attend the online mass. Ako, I celebrate mass daily, no, online at 4:30 p.m. Should you want to join me, let me know. No, I celebrate a daily mass 4:30 for my friends. And these are the people now who could not go to mass and because of the situation right now. And for now, to answer your question, Kuya Ben, for now, we just have to be patient. Kasi even us priests, sobra na namin nami-miss talaga yung totoong yung tao, yung community, yung, as Filipinos, the way we celebrate the liturgy, the singing, it's not there. And you know what? Because of this, we begin to appreciate the mass all the more because nawala siya eh. People are longing for it. Kanina si Jeff, by the way, si Jeff is my batchmate sa AYLA Young Leaders, and he's telling me na nakakamiss na talaga yung misa. Kung kayo nami-miss nyo, lalo na kami mga pare, no? Ako I celebrate mass daily online and I miss the actual mass. And but we cannot do anything about it for now. It might take for a year, no? But for some, although ngayon pwede na ngayon with social distancing, but again, the Lord wants us to be healthy. That's number one. And wag tayong matigas ang ulo din, no? At saka we might infect other people, So I urge people, if they go to masses, the actual mass, observe the necessary regulations as proposed by the parish or the CBCP. Otherwise, be patiently attend the online masses. There are so many online masses in the internet, no? Napakarami. And kami mga Jesuits, we have our online mass also sa Jesuit Communications, which you can also attend at 8 o'clock every day sa Jesuit Communications. But again, for now, we have to be patient until such time that we can go back to what it was before. But again, it might take a little while. So mas nakakamiss, you never know what you really miss when it's gone already, right? Yung tama nila, no? Sasabi nila na, totoo, people are really more appreciative of the mass. Kasi nga nawala eh. So, but for now, let's just wait. Let's just be patient.
Thank you for that, Father. Father, we're all batchmates sila, Jeff.
Yes.
We are from we are from the not so long ago Ayala batch. So I won't even mention I don't even want to mention the year anymore. Kasi Jeff mentioned already his age. Okay. So going back to I think another question going to Trent. Trent, how do you balance daw your profession and then your passion? So how do you do that, like in terms of the balancing act?
Ayun. Actually, I'm not, exercising my profession now. I'm not teaching. Pero at this time of pandemic, parang nag-offer ako ng free tutor dito sa barangay namin. Kasi yun yung kaya kong gawin sa kanila. And then siguro po yung question, paano ko nababalance? I'm working in an NGO. And I'm doing rin yung filmmaking as part-time job. So dun po kasi sa work ko, parang meron kaming 2 days day off. So ang akin lang, time management lang po talaga. So kung paano ko siya yung siniset. And then kinakausap ko ng maayos lang yung film director namin na baka pwedeng yung shoot dun po sa time na kung kailan day off ako. So parang 7 days talaga ako nag-work. Yun. So nababalance ko po siya in a way na yun nga, kung sabi ko nga po kanina kung gusto mo talaga to, kung mahal mo talaga yung ginagawa mo, gagawa ka ng paraan para makamit mo siya. So, in that way, yun yung motivation ko talaga para at least to keep going kahit hectic yung schedule, busy sa work, ganyan. So, gumagawa po talaga ako ng paraan para maisingit po yung filmmaking. Ayun. Time management po, yung key.
Okay, so thank you for that, Trent. We call in now Steve to have some, before we wrap up, if you have some announcements, Steve.
Yes. Thank you very much. Does my voice clear?
Yes, Steve.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for our speakers. Very inspirational and motivational po sa lahat. Maraming salamat po. Then to all our viewers and from Facebook, all around the Philippines, especially maraming mga taga-Tarlac. Yan. We will be having our next for our announcement. We will be having our part 2 for this raising up pandemic. Raising our flag part 2. I'm just going to share some quotes for it. A moment. Okay, to our viewers.
Okay, Steve, are you still there?
Yep.
Okay, so actually this is the part that we are to end, but tonight was particularly in terms of the insights, in terms of the lessons, in terms of talagang kailangan ng Pilipinas siguro ngayon ang mga positibong pananaw at mga mga kwento para masimulan nating tumayo ulit, particularly in this pandemic reality that we are all facing. So we would, in behalf of AYLA-BU and then runcationPH, we would like to thank Sena, Father Ro, Neric, Trent, and Jeff for the time that you have spent in this undertaking. And we also would like to thank our viewers. Though this is actually a very simple project that we have started, but at least we have a platform to actually share positive thoughts, particularly in these times of pandemic reality. So again, maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat, sa mga viewers natin, maraming salamat. We actually have a viewer as far as Malawi, and then of course our viewing partners as well. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. So until the next undertaking, maraming salamat po sa patuloy niyong suporta. Mabuhay po ang Pilipinas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.